Hello and welcome to the Community Services Block Grant CARES at Rapid Cycle Impact Project Funding Opportunity Announcement Overview Webinar. I'm Sharice Johnson, Division Director for the Division of Community Assistance in the Office of Community Services, Administration for Children and Families, Department of Health and Human Services. The aim of this webinar is to provide an overview of this exciting funding opportunity. This presentation will only cover the information detailed in the FOA, which can be found at www.acf.hhs.gov/OCS FY2021 CSBG RCIP FOA. Don't worry, the link will be referenced again later in the presentation. Today's webinar will provide an overview of the funding opportunity announcement and walk you through the elements of the Rapid Cycle Impact Project funding opportunity announcement. We'll start with going over the executive summary, describe who is eligible to apply. We will review the nuts and bolts of the Rapid Cycle Impact projects, including the focus area, what rapid cycle learning models are, and the project phases. We will talk about how to submit an application and what information needs to be included. We'll talk about how the applications will be reviewed and share some additional resources that applicants may want to check out to assist in completing the application. The goal of the CSBG Rapid Cycle Impact projects are threefold. First, these grants are intended to adapt current service models to respond to immediate community needs, while also preparing future models that realign local services. The Rapid Cycle Impact project should prevent, prepare for, and respond to the economic and social impacts of COVID-19. The Rapid Cycle Impact projects are expected to address one or more of the identified priority areas that have been identified by OCS. We'll cover exactly what they are later in the presentation. As detailed in the funding opportunity announcement, all funding has been earmarked to up to $3,850,000 towards the projects. OCS plans to fund up to 20 regionally diverse projects around the country. Grantees will be awarded up to $250,000 to implement their CSBG RCIP project. The Rapid Cycle Impact projects will have a 15-month project period and budget period. Later in the presentation, we'll review what those 15 months will look like in terms of project phases. The funded Rapid Cycle Impact projects will begin on October 1st of 2021 and will wrap up by December 31st, 2022. Now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Colley, DCA Program Specialist, who will go over eligibility requirements, how to submit applications, application components, and how applications will be reviewed. Turning it over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Sharice. My name is Andrew Colley. I'm a program specialist with DCA. Thank you for listening to our presentation. And firstly, I'm just going to go over who is eligible to apply for the RCIP grants. As defined in the FOA, eligible applicants are CSBG eligible entities or statewide or local organizations or associations with demonstrated experience in providing training to individuals and organizations on methods of effectively addressing the needs of low-income families and communities. There are 5 major project focus areas, and as we mentioned earlier, RCIP grantees will need to focus their efforts on at least one of these 5. These areas include coordination with public health and emergency management officials to address urgent health and social outcomes for people with low income, adapting service delivery to a physical distancing environment to promote safety and effectiveness, strengthening individual and family adaptive capacities, which includes 2-generation and intergenerational service models, making structural reforms at the community level, identifying and training for high demand jobs in the post COVID-19 economy. And under each of these project focus areas, we have listed some examples that projects might consider. But we ask that you note these examples provided are just a small sampling of the types of projects that could be funded. They do not represent the full gamut of eligible projects that fall within the priority areas. Projects should be based on the specific needs, systems, and organizational partnerships available in each community. OCS wants to encourage projects with innovative ideas that cater to specific community needs. OCS is particularly interested in projects that include new partnerships with sectors and industries not previously involved with the CSBG network. The Rapid Cycle Impact Project grants will incorporate a rapid cycle learning model into their projects. OCS will support RCIP grantees in using these learning modules, and they rely heavily on continuous quality improvement. As noted in the FOA on page 4, there's a link, which is also on the slide, that provides more information on what rapid cycle learning means. The core traits of this method are to start with program objectives, identify a strategic change to test, hypothesize potential improvements, determine the appropriate measurement, and then analyze the outcomes and make decisions. As we mentioned earlier, RCIP projects will have 15 months to successfully implement their project. OCS anticipates the timeline for the 15 months to include 3 phases. The first being rapid cycle plan refinement, which will take place in the first 3 months of the project and will include refining project goals, intended outcomes, and measures. The second phase is the quarterly review and refinement phase, which will take place in months 4 to 12 of the project and will include quarterly calls with rapid cycle learning experts that will be identified by OCS. The third and final phase of the RCIP grants is the final impact assessment and sustainability planning phase. These will take place during the 13 to 15 months of the project and will evaluate the overall success of the community project and its implementation. So how do eligible entities apply for this grant? Well, ACF requires electronic submission of applications at www.grants.gov. And please note that paper applications received by OCS that have not had a written exemption from ACF will not be considered for funding. Each applicant who would be applying for the RCIP grant is required to upload only 2 electronic files, one that contains the project description and one that includes documents in the form of appendices. We will cover what should be included in each of these 2 files in the upcoming slide. Please note, and we will mention this several times during this presentation, the deadline for submitting an application is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on July 26, 2021. Any applications received after this time will not be considered. As noted in the previous slide, applicants are expected to submit 2 electronic files, one of which is a project description and includes all the bullet points listed below, and the second being the appendices, which should include the bullets listed below. Please note that both of these files cannot exceed 150 pages in total. Next, we're going to go through each of these sections for both the project description and appendices and cover the specific information that we're looking for in each section. After we've gone through each of these, we will cover what the application reviewers will be looking for and how they'll be scoring each section. For the need for assistance section, applicants should clearly identify the physical, economic, social, financial, institution, and any other problems that require a solution. The need for assistance, including the nature and scope of the problem, must be demonstrated. Supporting documentation such as letters of support and testimonials from concerned parties may be included in the appendix. For the objectives section, clearly state the principal and subordinate objectives of the project. Applicants should address how these objectives relate to the overall purpose of the program and describe how objectives will be achieved. For the expected outcomes section of the application, applicants should identify the outcomes to be achieved from the project. Outcomes should relate to the overall program as described in the FOA. If research is part of the proposed work, outcomes must include hypothesized results and implications of the proposed research. The next section is the approach section. Applicants should outline a plan of action that describes the scope and detail of how the proposed project will be accomplished. Applicants must account for all functions or activities identified in the application. And in addition, applicants should identify potential obstacles and challenges to accomplishing project goals and explain strategies that will be used to address these challenges. This section really discusses what is considered to be the meat of the project and details exactly what the applicant will be doing to address the community needs that have been impacted by COVID-19. It should also discuss the intervention that the applicant will undertake to address those needs and identify any partnerships that will accomplish those goals. For the project timeline and milestones section of the application, applicants should provide quantitative monthly or quarterly projections for the entire 15-month project period of the accomplishments to be achieved for each function or activity. For the organizational capacity section, applicants should provide information that shows OCS that they have the capacity to complete the stated project. Evidence of this would include all of the bullets listed below on the slide. For the program performance evaluation plan section, applicants should present a strategy to develop, refine, and assess project implementation and impact that specifies aspects of the project that will be studied using the rapid cycle or continuous quality improvement approach. The project should be designed in a manner that will ensure the services or strategies proposed are clearly defined and the proposed measures of impact are practical and easily measured. For the logic model section, applicants should target the identified objectives and goals of the project. This should be in the form of a diagram that presents the conceptual framework of the proposed project and explains the links among program elements, which would include inputs, target population, activities, mechanisms, and processes, outputs, outcomes, and goals of the project. Examples are included for each part of these bullets. For the third-party agreements section, applicants should provide letters of commitment or memorandums of understanding between recipients and third parties. These would include subrecipients, contractors, or other cooperating entities. We ask you to note that general letters of support are not considered to be third-party agreements. There is a dedicated section, which we will discuss next, for general letters of support. Third-party agreements are commitments for specific tasks to be undertaken during the project. As mentioned in the previous slide, the letters of support section should provide statements from community, public, and/or commercial leaders that support the proposed project. All submissions must be included in the application package, and at a minimum, the letter should identify the individual who wrote it, the organization they represent, the date, and the reason that they are supporting the project. For the project budget and budget justification section, applicants should provide a budget using the SF424A or the SF424 and provide a budget justification which includes a budget narrative and a line item detail for each year of the proposed project. The narrative section should describe how the categorical costs are derived, and they should discuss the necessity, reasonableness, and allocation of the proposed cost. The plan for oversight of federal award funds section should describe the framework, which would include the governance, the policies and procedures, the risk management systems, which are in place to ensure proper oversight of federal funds. The description of this oversight should include the systems for record keeping and financial management, procedures to identify and mitigate risks and issues, and the key staff that will be responsible for maintaining oversight of program activities. So we have just covered the content that should be covered in all of your applications. Once they are received, they will be reviewed and evaluated based on the criteria we're going to cover in just a couple of minutes. Reviewers will determine the extent to which the application addresses each of these criteria, and they will assign points according to the point distribution that we'll show on the next slide. Please note that applicants should address all criteria in their application materials, as they are the basis upon which competing applications will be judged during the objective review. This slide details the point distribution for each respective section of the FOA. Please note that there is a total of 105 possible points. Applicants can receive up to 5 bonus points for involving partnerships that promote service and system integration into their project. We will cover the specifics of the bonus points requirements later in the presentation. The first section that reviewers will be looking at is the need for assistance section. In this section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the applicant clearly describes the many COVID-19 related challenges the community is facing and how the proposed project will address those needs. Applicants can be awarded up to 5 points for this section. For the overall understanding of objectives section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the applicant clearly identifies the significant features and components of the intended project, that they have clearly stated the goals and objectives, and they have provided rationale for the project goals and objectives. Reviewers will also consider the extent to which the applicant clearly describes how the goals and objectives of the proposed project will address the immediate community needs related to the COVID-19 pandemic, while advancing community service delivery methods for a post-COVID-19 economy. This section can be worth up to 15 points. For the expected outcomes section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the applicant's expected outcomes relate to the overall purpose of the project. Applicants can be awarded up to 5 points for this section. The approach section is the most heavily weighted. Applicants can receive up to 20 points for this section, and they will be reviewed on the extent to which they present a well-conceived overall approach to the project, including a preliminary design for the implementation and details describing how the project will achieve the goals stated in Section 1 program description of the FOA. The planned implementation should include a clear and comprehensive vision of how the proposed project will prevent, prepare for, and respond to the economic and social impacts of COVID-19. The applicant will also be reviewed on the extent to which they present a comprehensive implementation approach that includes at least one of the primary focuses that we covered earlier in the presentation. The proposed implementation plan also will be judged on whether it describes a project that addresses at least one or more of the focus areas and clearly states that the project will provide community level change that empowers individuals and families in adapting to new economic, social, and public health changes that have resulted from COVID-19. Reviewers will also be looking at the extent to which the applicant demonstrates commitments from community partners that describe the roles and responsibilities of those partners and that they will contribute to the successful implementation of the proposed project. Lastly, for this section, reviewers will be considering the extent to which the applicant presents an innovative project approach, which includes rapid adaptation of service delivery approaches directly relevant to the identified focus areas which we just discussed. For the project timeline and milestones section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the applicant clearly describes how the project will adhere to the RCIP phases described in section 1 of the FOA. They will also be reviewed as to whether or not they have developed a strategy to implement the project in the allotted 15-month period, which includes a plan refinement phase, a quarterly review and refinement phase, and a final impact assessment and sustainability planning phase. Applicants can be awarded up to 10 points for this section. I'm sorry, up to 5 points for this section. For the organizational capacity section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the application clearly documents the roles, responsibilities, and time commitments of each proposed project staff position. These would include consultants, subcontractors, and partners. They will also consider that these positions are well-defined and appropriate to the successful implementation of the proposed project. This section can be awarded up to 5 points. For the logic model section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the applicant presents a well-defined logic model that guides the proposed project. The logic model demonstrates strong linkages between the applicant's expected achievements and likely short-term, immediate, and long-term outcomes. The logic model addresses the goals stated in Section 1, Program Description, CSBG CARES RCIP Impact Grants in the FOA. Applicants can be awarded up to 5 points for this section. For the third-party agreements section, reviewers will consider the extent to which letters of commitment and MOUs clearly describe the roles and responsibilities for project activities and the support and resources that the third party will commit. Applicants can be awarded up to 5 points for this section. For the project budget and budget justification section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the budget is clearly outlined and aligned with the project proposed, and it includes a narrative justification for the amount requested. Additionally, the costs of the project are reasonable, program-related, and commensurate with the type and range of activities and services to be conducted during the project. Applicants can be awarded up to 15 points for this section. For the plan for oversight of federal awards, award funds section, reviewers will consider the extent to which the applicant describes the framework in place to ensure proper oversight of federal funds. This description would include systems for record keeping and financial management, procedures to identify and mitigate risks and issues, and key staff that will be responsible for maintaining oversight of program activities. This section can be awarded up to 5 points. The bonus points section, which we mentioned earlier, will require reviewers to consider the extent to which the applicant has demonstrated evidence that the proposed project will involve partnerships to promote service and system integration. A total of 3 points will be awarded to projects that demonstrate partnerships with state associations of CSBG eligible entities. These partnerships should include project collaboration and involvement and/or technical assistance. A total of 2 points will be awarded to projects that demonstrate partnerships with private partners, which would be non-state associations of CSBG eligible entities, which may include nonprofit organizations, governmental partners not involved in the administration of CSBG, and private industry partners. These partnerships too should include project collaboration and involvement and/or technical assistance. Please note that applicants could be awarded 5 bonus points in total for both categories if the project has partnerships with state associations of CSBG eligible entities and partnerships with additional private entities. Thank you very much. I'm now going to pass the presentation back off to Sharice Johnson. She's going to close this session out with a quick discussion of due dates, how to submit questions, and links to some additional resources. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Great job. Let's wrap up in a few minutes. It's very important to remember applications must be received by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on July 26, 2021. As we have noted several times, applications received after the deadline will not be considered. And it's very important to know if anyone has any questions that were not covered in the presentation, we ask that they submit them in writing to ocsta@grantreview.org. That website is on the screen. Please note that we cannot give out information that is not included in the FOA. We'll do our very best to answer questions by potential applicants, but we are unable to provide any additional guidance outside of the FOA. It would be unfair to other applicants. Thanks for understanding. Finally, thank you very much for attending this webinar. We will leave you with some additional resources which can be seen on the slide. We'll look forward to seeing some innovative and creative projects that will effectively respond to immediate community needs from the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you again, and be safe.